Hello, it is Tag Tuesday, and I decided to do the History Trail tag after seeing Bill over at Bill Rutenberg and Jeff over at Reading Still Matters do the tag. I decided that I was going to jump in and do it too. I'm not exclusively a history reader, but I am a big history reader, so I am doing the tag. So let's get started. The first question is called First Steps. What book, movie, person, place introduced you to history or historical fiction? And I would have to say, early on in the I would say 2000s, I got into David McCullough. This is John Adams, and this is The Path Between the Seas, about the making of the Panama Canal. I have never read anything below 5 stars for David McCullough. I just think he is absolutely amazing. Then later on, I got into Stacy Schiff. I read The Witches, and I also read Cleopatra, that's mentioned down here. She is great. And then my favorite narrative nonfiction writer is Erik Larson. And this is my favorite Erik Larson, Dead Wake, about the sinking of the Lusitania. So I don't know, I think I came across these authors just doing research in the library on things to read as I became more curious about history. And also when I got into watching booktube videos and people that were talking about history and the great authors. So that made me want to read more history, and then I was hooked. Okay, number 2, Well-Trodden Place. What is your favorite historical fiction recommendation? And I would have to say for David McCullough, it would be John Adams. And then I read this when it came out. This is Half American, the epic story of African Americans fighting World War II at home and abroad, by Matthew F. Delmont. Great author, great subject. I just learned so much about African American history and what these soldiers went through abroad and at home. That was fantastic. And it took me a while to read this because I watched the movie, but everybody knows that you should read the book also. I mean, go see a movie, but you should read the book also, because the book has so much more and is so much more accurate. You know, Hollywood has to make it Hollywood, right? But this is Hidden Figures by Margot Lee Shetterly. This was absolutely amazing. 5 stars. Okay, number 3, favorite historical fashion era. And I would have to say the Jazz Age. I just love the suits, the zoot suits and the shoes and the hats and all of that for the Jazz Age. And I have quite a few jazz biographies that I need to read because I really do like that age and the music of the Jazz Age as well. So that's that. Number 4, what is a historical read set? What is a historical read close to home set in your home country? What is an historical close to home read set in your home country? Okay. Instead of saying my home country, I'm going to say my home, the state and the capital of that state, because I live in Richmond, Virginia. So I am going to talk about The Devil's Half Acre. This was set in Richmond, Virginia. This was written by Kristen Green. It's the untold story of how one woman liberated the South's most notorious slave jail. And this is fantastic. And the historical fiction equivalent to this is Yellow Wife by Sadiqa Johnson. This says, I'm just going to read the inside cover. It says, Confederate statues are being brought down across the country, and America is reckoning with its history. In The Devil's Half Acre, New York Times bestselling author Kristen Green draws on years of research to tell the extraordinary story of young Mary Lumpkin, an enslaved woman who blazed a path of liberation for thousands. Born in 1832, Mary Lumpkin was forced to have the children of a brutal slave trader and live at his Richmond, Virginia slave jail, known by enslaved people as the Devil's Half Acre. In this destitute setting, she not only freed herself and her children, she managed to create something monumental. When Mary Lumpkin inherited the jail after his death, she transformed it into God's Half Acre, a school where black students could fulfill their dreams. It still exists today as Virginia Union University, one of America's first historically black colleges and universities. So I highly recommend this, and I highly recommend the historical fiction version called The Yellow Wife by Sadiqa Johnson. I don't have my copy with me right now to show you. Okay, next question. The trail not taken. What historical areas do you avoid? And I would have to agree with Jeff. When Jeff did this tag, he said the Victorian age, and I would have to say the same. I'm not particularly drawn to the Victorian age. I don't know why. I mean, if someone gives me a great recommendation, then I will consider reading it, but I'm not particularly drawn to the Victorian era. Okay, number 6, trail map. What historical reads are on your TBR? So, I really don't want to keep this for Military May for next year. So I want to read this year, and this is Bloods, Black Veterans of the Vietnam War and Oral History by Wallace Terry. I read a lot of African American history, and there's not a lot that I know about blacks that served in the military. So I really want to know African American side of the story as far as Vietnam is concerned. And I heard this book was amazing. I haven't read an Abraham Lincoln book in a while, and you know, Abraham Lincoln books come out at least 2 a year, right? This is The Fiery Trial, Abraham Lincoln and American Slavery by Eric Foner. And so I plan to get into this year. And then I found this on my shelf. I think this is a cross between contemporary history and Black history. But this is Africa Town, America's Last Slave Ship and the Community It Created by Nick Tabor. So I plan to get into this year. All right. And pioneers is the last question, number 7. What historical person inspires you? And I would have to say Frederick Douglass. I read the book Frederick Douglass by David Blight. I don't know, I can't remember the year that it came out, but I read it when it came out, and I thought it was fantastic. Frederick Douglass's story is just absolutely amazing. So I would say that he is the historical person that inspires me. And lastly, it says, tag your fellow history nerds. Well, if you really like history, I'm just going to say, go ahead and do the tag. I would love to hear what your reading recommendations are. I don't know offhand what history nerds have not done the tag, so feel free. Well, thank you for watching. That was a fun tag to do, and I hope you were inspired to read something that I shared. Until next time, enjoy what you're reading.